Welcome back to my channel for the second in a series of videos about one of my favorite topics, intuition. And it occurred to me after I shot the first one that it would be important for me perhaps to share with you why I think intuition is so very important. And in fact, I think intuition will save us. So I'm going to share with you today about what I think the two big reasons are for all of us to develop our intuition. And maybe some of it you're familiar with, but I bet some of it you aren't. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Do you ever find yourself confused and overwhelmed and exhausted from the conversation that's going on in your head? So many thoughts, so many opinions, contradicting each other a lot of times. And sometimes you can even have undermining or even punishing voices in your head. Okay, so you've probably heard the term monkey mind, right? This is one way to describe what's going on in there. Another is the inner critic or even the punishing parent. And so the voice that picks on you, that tells you to do better, that you're not good enough, that you haven't done enough, that you're not worthy, that you're, not valuable, all of that stuff, right? I mean, there can just be this real mishigas going on, this chaos going on in your mind. And a lot of times we call that monkey mind, but there's other names for it too. So things like I said, critical parent or inner critic. I often call this the saboteur, right? So it's this part of us that is trying to keep us safe by keeping us small. And so a lot of that confusion, overwhelm, exhaustion, and so on is actually a strategy of that part to keep you small, because it's very hard to move forward in your life when you've got all of that chaos going on in your mind, right? Yeah, so that's one thing that happens when we allow the mind to be really the master in our lives. We allow this brilliant part of us to take over and be in charge, and it likes being in charge, right? Well, why do we do this? What is this about? Well, we have grown up in a culture that really values left brain knowing. We have actually left brain dominance in Western culture, and we're taught this from the earliest ages. As soon as you go to school, and I know that my kid, even when they were in preschool, were being taught their letters and their numbers and reading and writing and arithmetic. And those things were valued, especially as they got into elementary school and continued on. Much more important than singing or dancing or painting or sculpting or even telling stories and writing poetry, doing more creative writing. Right? It was that really left brain, analytical, strategic type of learning, much more linear, that was valued. And we're taught this everywhere, right? It's like you make a statement, somebody will be like, well, where did you get that from? Right? Can you prove it to me? Right? And so this is a kind of a baseline way that most of us really think in our culture. And the tricky part is that the saboteur that I was just talking about, that the monkey mind, the part that is the critical voice inside, often masquerades as logic and reason. Okay? It fools you into thinking that it is smarter than you, that it's more logical, it's more analytical, it's more strategic, it knows what's best for you, and you should let it be in charge. Okay. And it's very wily that way because it knows that we have been acculturated into privileging the way of the left brain and really not honoring the way of the right brain, which is far more intuitive. Or what we see in human design, the knowing circuit, which the next video I do will be about the knowing circuit, right? All of these different ways that human design shows us that we are intuitive, and you have probably discovered some of yours, right? But that left brain often will be beating up on whatever intuition it is that you have. It'll be telling you that those creative things are not as important, and that you can't make money doing that. You can't have a business doing that. You can't find a job doing that, right? And you need to be much more kind of strategic and plan and analytical about what you're doing. Okay. So the thing is it can be very difficult to differentiate between true analysis and logic and the voice of the inner critic. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, think about this for a minute. Have you ever had that kind of dialogue going on in yourself and you're going, wow, this part of me is really questioning this decision that I made after I did all the pros and cons and I added everything up and I planned it out and I made a decision, and then I'm still getting this part that's undermining me, right? And so it can be difficult to differentiate those two. And even when you can differentiate them, you may still be giving logic and left brain ways of knowing the priority. And, it totally makes sense, right? Because we're steeped in believing that this is where truth and power lie. And this grows out of the dominance of Western science that has really taken hold over the last about 4 or 5 centuries, okay? The thing to understand, now I'm not an anti-science person, okay? I just think that science needs to be in right relationship with everything else. And I also think, unfortunately, that a lot of science has gotten co-opted by profit, basically. Powers that are driven by profit. And they're often the ones that are funding science now. And so the science has a vested interest in giving the results that those who funded their research want to receive, right? And the rise of Western science is tied to the rise of colonialism and the rise of capitalism also, and, historically. And both colonialism and capitalism, but especially the kind of capitalism we have now, multinational capitalism, that is based in multinational corporations, has a need for an ever-growing economy, which creates a consumer culture where we're always needing to buy and buy and buy more, even if we don't need it, right? Think of all the things that are out there that you get marketed to buy that you don't need. But, we've kind of been taught to go, oh, that widget for my kitchen, that could actually be really helpful. I'm going to go ahead and get that, even though it's another little piece of plastic that's probably going to end up in the landfill in a couple of years, right? But we're kind of acculturated into wanting to consume and wanting to buy. And all of this is tied to, for example, what's going on in the stock market. People have been anxious lately because the stock market has gone down, right? And they want the stock market to go up. And I understand that people have all of their retirement funds in there and they're expecting a return on their investment every single year. It needs to be at least 10%, right? So that their money can grow over time and then they can retire, right? This is something I know I was taught as a young person. And so we want our economy to keep growing, right? And the problem with that is it's really based on not just consumer culture, like we're consuming, goods and services, but we're also consuming the earth, right? We have been breaking as much energy and resources out of the earth as possible over the last few hundred years, whether that's, it was coal or oil or precious metals or trees, whatever it is, right? Just getting the power, getting the precious resources that we can use for the things that we want to build, and then we can sell, and then they can be consumed, right? And the problem is that we've just really not been in right relationship with the earth, right? We're taking and taking and taking and really not giving back. Whereas all of nature and really the universe is based on reciprocity. It's based on, energy goes this way, energy comes this way. It's like, you've probably heard that, what goes around comes around, right? What you put out is going to come back to you. Well, guess what? That's kind of what's happening right now is we've put out this piece where we are consuming all of the different resources of the earth without giving back. And now we've got some real problems that are coming back to us. And all of this is based in believing that we are separate from each other, right? And then we're also separate from the non-human world. Also separate from spirit, but I'm not even talking about that right now. I'm talking about that human beings are distinct and we are separate, and we're separate from the non-human world. And that we're not just separate, but that as humans, we are superior. And that we can do whatever we want since we're the dominant species. We're the dominant predator. We've shown that. We have pretty much, taken over the planet and subjected any of the other predators, main predators, to our will, right? And the thing is that this level of consciousness has led to what many consider to be a higher standard of living, right? And certainly technology has given us many wonders. I mean, we do have indoor heating, we do have indoor plumbing in a lot of parts of the world anyway. We do have the global grocery store where we can get stuff from different parts of the world. And we do have, computers, and I have a microphone and all of that, right? So we have developed technology that has elevated our standard of living in the sense that we're no longer living in the European cities of the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries where they would just take their chamber pots and throw it out front to the stream that was going right into the Thames, right? Which was partly why the plague ran through Europe during that time. We don't have that going on. And that's also only one snapshot of the past of humanity. There are many other times where a different kind of standard of living was really revered and honored among indigenous people, all over the planet. And so we have been programmed, if you will, into believing, and this is what our consciousness tells us, it's that we have a higher standard of living, and that is dependent, unfortunately, on us doing these things to the earth. But, we like this standard of living, so we're going to keep on doing it, right? So that's all based in left brain thinking. It's based in the dominance of left brain thinking and the dominance of science, which unfortunately is not free of vested interest of those who are paying for the studies that they do, right? So you can see how this works. So we can't find our way out of climate change or ecological collapse or increasing inequities among the people of the earth or between the people of the earth and the more than human world with this level of consciousness. Right? We can't, because this level of consciousness is committed to this worldview. And, Einstein said that you cannot solve an issue from the same level of consciousness from which it was created, which I know you've probably heard before. People say it a lot. I think it's really worth thinking about. How are we shifting our level of consciousness so that something else becomes available, so that new possibilities arise for us? And I love what Buckminster Fuller said, that we need to create a new paradigm, rather than fighting the one that we're in, right? Is we need to create a new paradigm that just makes the old one obsolete. And that's kind of where I put my attention and my energy. And I also honor and appreciate those who are kind of fighting the old paradigm, right? Because I think that's actually needed too, but it's just not my thing. I find a lot more energy and inspiration and creating new paradigms that make the old one obsolete. And so in order to do that, we have to break away from these old and tired ways of thinking and acting based in what Riane Eisler, 20 years ago, I think, named the dominator culture, right? She talks about the dominator culture and the partnership culture, and she places this, actually before the rise of Western civilization. And it's a useful juxtaposition for us to use in thinking about our culture of today. So we need to elevate our consciousness so that we remember that we're a part of the web of life, right? That all of humanity, but also the more than human world, are inextricably intertwined, right? We need to remember that. And you may know that I am a certified radiant body yoga teacher, and have studied the wisdom traditions that come out of India in the realm of yoga. And they were talking about the interconnectedness, thousands of years ago. This is like 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. So they really got it, right? And I know that indigenous cultures all over the world totally get this. Like, it's the baseline of how they understand what reality is, right? But we've gotten disconnected from that. We, bought this idea that we are the superior race, and that certain people even cited in humanity were more superior to other people, right? Which is where we get, racial hierarchies and gendered hierarchies and economic hierarchies and all that, right? But that we're not actually interconnected. But I think about this for a minute. One of the reasons that we have so much chronic illness in our world today, and especially in the United States, we have an incredibly unhealthy population for being the wealthiest country on the planet. It's crazy, right? But we have a lot of chronic illness, and it's just getting worse. And one way to think about this is that we're reflecting what's happening to the planet. The planet is chronically ill, right? It's kind of limping along. And we've been doing this to the planet. So like I said, what goes around comes around, right? What we've done to the planet is now coming back to us in a variety of different ways. This is why, so many people now have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from Roundup, which is something that Monsanto created along with their genetically modified plants. And now glyphosate, which is the primary ingredient in Roundup. There's lots of other nasty stuff in there too, but it's in the groundwater. They're finding it in breast milk and in people's urine. And so it's really coming into us. And so it's coming back around to us, right? We think, oh, it's happening over there. It's happening over there, and we just put our blinders on and pretend that we don't see it. But it is coming back to us. So the way out requires us to activate and tap into other ways of knowing. And this is one of the things that human design is so helpful with. Is one of why I love human design and quantum human design so much, because we need our inner guidance from our own soul beings, our own soul selves. And collectively, we need guidance from the greater flow of life, from spirit, from the all that is, from the creative intelligence of the universe. Right? We need it. And, some of you may work with angels or guides or bodhisattvas or with Mother Mary or Jesus or Muhammad, whatever your relationship to the larger flow, that creative intelligence is, right? That is what intuition is. Intuition is our connection with spirit. That's exactly what it is. And you may have heard this before and you may get it as a concept, okay? But you may not really get it. What I want to do is I want to share a couple of stories from my own life that have really kind of stood out to me as I watch my life unfold, so that you can get a sense of what does it really mean when you live by intuition. When you have stepped out of that left brain dominance, you've stepped out of the dominance of Western science, and you've been willing to open to the inner guidance. What can happen? One thing you may have heard me say, if you've been following me for a while, because I say it a lot, is that I only do what I have energy for. And I would say it's been about 2 years that I've been really practicing that. That was a few years into my human design experiment, where I really was like, you know what? For real, I'm just going to do what I have energy for. And I've discovered that as a result of making this commitment and practicing it, because you have to practice it, right? Even when it just doesn't make any sense, that I become more and more attuned to my intuition and my inner guidance. And the reason for this is that I have to surrender my mind, whatever my mind might think, to the deeper flow of energy that's running through me. Okay. And that's a form of intuition. So one of the most recent examples is when my family died. So my brother and my mother both died inside of a week last June. And I wasn't really devastated, but I definitely had kind of moved into an altered state. And I decided to follow what I had energy for and what I didn't. I had been full on beginning to revise my book. I'd gotten the first draft back from my editor. I'd shared it with a friend. I was really excited about it. I was working on it every day. And suddenly I didn't have the energy for it. Now, you might think that's because, well, sure, you're in grief, right? Or you're in shock or something like that. But shock and grief were not the dominant experience that I had. I was actually feeling pretty good, moving around in my world, taking care of stuff with my mom. You know, I'm her executor, so I had to take care of that. I had to take care of some stuff with my brother, you know, that kind of thing. But in the past, I would have made myself go back to writing because I was feeling pretty good. But I didn't have energy for it. Like every time I thought about doing it or started to move to do it, I just was like, my sacralism, So I gave myself a lot of time and space to not do much of anything beyond what I had to do, like shooting my videos and working with my clients, things like that. So after several weeks, grief started coming up from deep, deep inside of me, like really deep, was not on the surface. It also did not have a lot of content. It wasn't like, oh, I miss my mom so much or I miss my brother so much. It wasn't really like that. It was just like this energetic ball inside of me that needed to be released. So I would have these crying bouts for like half an hour or so, and then it would be done. And I felt tender, you know, because that kind of thing does make you tender, but I also felt okay. I didn't feel, like I said, I didn't feel devastated. I wasn't crying all the time or anything like that. So this went on for 3 months. And this is what I had energy for. Then suddenly, I got this energy about my book again. And I got curious and I began writing on it. And I was excited for it. I was like kind of putting it into my, piling it into my brain. You know what? It didn't last very long because only about, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I suddenly felt compelled to work on a project that I'm working on now of setting up an online community that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Like I've had this idea for a couple of years, but I just didn't have energy for it. And I suddenly was like, I need to do this and I need to do this now. So for the last 3 weeks, I've been researching and developing and designing the platforms for that community, and I can't seem to stop. The flow of energy and the inner direction is so strong, and I feel excited and inspired with all of it. I can see how so many different elements of what I have been kind of mulling over and thinking about for the last couple of years are starting to come together, and I'm going to be able to offer inside of this community and how I get to start interacting with people like you because I want to interact with the people who come to my YouTube channel more, right? And I kept checking in with myself to see if I'm on track. Because in some ways, it's not logical or strategic at all. It doesn't make sense, right? I mean, my mind is like, you really should finish your book, right? You should do that. Your schedule was to finish the book by the end of the year, and then your family died, so you delayed for 3 months. Okay, we get that. But now you really should be writing the book, right? And right now you're pushing it off. So the good news is that I don't give a lot of attention to thoughts like that. I really have managed in some way to not give energy to it, not to listen to that, and really feel and really listen to what my body is saying and what I have energy for. But even so, even this morning, I was checking in, right? And I got the message that, Maggie, you're doing super well. I'm right on track. This is exactly what I should be doing. This is exactly the right time. And that's from my inner guidance, from my intuition, affirming what I'm feeling energetically. And I'm very auditory. So I connect with my inner being and my guides, and I hear voices, which comes through my knowing circuit. So I hear voices and it comes in and it's very, very affirming, right? I don't feel confused. I'm not overwhelmed and I'm not tired at all. In fact, I have to make myself stop working on this project and go outside for a while because I know that that will be good for me in the long run. Also, I move my body a lot. I've been moving a lot and going to the gym, working with a dance trainer, because too many hours at the computer is really unhealthy for me, or for anyone really, but it has turned out to be very unhealthy for me. So that's more of my reality. And I talk to people all the time, both friends and people who come to me for readings and clients who doubt themselves, have critical, undermining thoughts, feel afraid or uncertain, don't believe that they can really do what they want to do, don't trust their inner guidance that they receive, right? They're really in this, and this is obviously what I work on with people, right? And I want you to know, if this is true for you, even some of the time, it doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. I actually had a conversation with a friend a few days ago where I said to her, because she was talking about this kind of negative voice and I just said, I don't have that. And she just sort of looked at me like, you don't have that? I don't have it. I used to have it, but I don't have it anymore. And I want you to know, it's not because I'm so special. I mean, yeah, sure, of course I'm special because I'm me. But it's not that I'm so unique or so special. It's that I made the commitment to surrender my mind and to follow my body wisdom and my inner guidance, my intuition. And I have a strong mind, and it's been a great ally. I mean, I got a PhD, right? I was a professor. I did the whole left brain thing for a long time. And I love my strong mind because it's helping me do this project that I told you before, right? Developing and designing and researching and all of that. My mind is great for that. It's a wonderful ally, but it's not my master. And I don't let it tell me what to do or not to do. And it doesn't even try anymore to control me. It doesn't. We are in right relationship with each other. The soul, what I call the soul-infused personality, right, is in charge, guided by my own inner soul self and my guides, right? And the mind carries out the tasks that I and my inner guidance give it, right? That's what it's designed for, like a computer. It's designed to carry out tasks. It's not designed to make decisions, to tell you what to do, or any of that. It actually, human design shows us that it does not have the capacity for that. The mind is, it is this kind of computer that we use for carrying out tasks. And it's also a place for inspiration and for insights and for us to connect with this creative intelligence of the universe. But when you're letting that left brain dominance that's being fueled by that inner saboteur, it takes over. It takes over and it colonizes your mind. It colonizes your thinking. And you might feel trapped inside of it. People feel trapped in it all the time. But you really can get in right relationship with your mind. You can. This can be true for you or for anyone who's willing to take command of your inner state, to surrender the need to be in control, which usually comes out of a survival mechanism, and to open to the wisdom that's just waiting for you to tap into it. It's just waiting. And I believe that as more and more of us do this, we'll receive the guidance that we need to exit the matrix of consumer culture and emerge into a new world that we can feel and that's calling us forward. And that we become the agents of ushering in a new era that is more equitable, where we can regenerate our planet, where we can remember that we really are interconnected, both with each other as humanity and also with the planet and the non-human world, all of our companion species, and that we can really have a very, very different kind of existence. But we're not going to get there through left brain dominance. We're not going to get there through Western science that has been taken over by profit-driven interests. It's not going to happen that way. We have to bring in our intuition. And this is what really has been driving me to create this series for you. Okay, that is my soapbox for today. And I hope that you will tune into what you have energy for and what you don't, and make a commitment to follow your inner guidance. Many blessings, much love. Bye for now.